Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
James Drucker, good to be here again. I've
Yes,
missed you,
yes,
Manny. It's been a while.
it has been, and I'm glad that we get to connect again. Life has a weird way of sometimes is derailing things,
Oh,
um,
tell me about it.
and and I'm glad that we get to talk about conventions today. So I remember last year we talked about Kamcon, something that you start. Is it just you starting this, or a group of
No,
people?
the way it started, Kamcon. First of all, is it's a regional gaming convention in Kamloops, British Columbia, which is on the west coast of Canada. Um, and it started pretty small, and it's still pretty small, to be honest. Um, but
Well, wait. How do you find? How did you find small?
Well, I guess my frame of reference is rather small because I haven't been to too many conventions myself. But considering it's like Gen Con was saying what they had like 15,000 people there, that's a big convention. We last
Yes.
year had 504 last year was our attendance. So that's sort of how I'm defining small. Now, obviously, you have a lot more experience with conventions and stuff like that. So I don't know what the population numbers look like and what's good, what's bad, or what
Mm.
you should be aiming for. But we're just hoping to keep growing, and we're hoping to become like something a lot more considerable, and that people will come to from further areas. So, and we'll get into that as we have more of this discussion. But basically, my involvement with Camcon, they started for the first time six or 7 years ago, and it was two guys, Julian Leader and Tyler Carpenter, who are gamers, and they were like, "Huh, we love going to conventions and stuff like that. Why don't we have one in Kamloops?" Yeah, that's why don't we have one in Kamloops? And then they just said, "Well, why don't we do one?" And so they did. They rented out a large kind of conference room in a local university, Three Rivers University. It's called TRU, and they made a call out for people to run games and have content, and I answered. It's like I'd moved to Kamloops within a few years of that, so I was hungry to find other people to play with, and so I just sort of jumped in like full bore, and I'm like, oh, I have all these great games and I love to play, and they'd be great at conventions. I wanted to run X Crawl, I wanted to run Call of Cthulhu, and so I already had all the X Crawl stuff, but all my Call of Cthulhu was like old or like D20, but I wanted to learn seventh edition, which was relatively new at the time. So I bought all the books and I prepped games and stuff like that. And so first year I was just a GM. I was that annoying GM in terms of the relationship with the convention organizers, with Julian and Tyler. Uh, in that I was always asking, well, what about this? How do we do this? Do we get this? Should we do this? Um, and so I was sort of teaching myself how to be a convention GM all by myself, because they're green as much as I was green at going to conventions and stuff. So it's all been a learning experience for us all throughout the years. But after that 1 year, basically there was a one of the GMs was really late and really ill prepared, and it was a game that I was actually playing in as opposed to running. Uh, and and I sort of took that to heart, and I'm like, this can't happen at a convention. So I went to them and I said, I'd like to help you out next year because I think the role playing experience could be better. And not to sully anybody else who came that year, because it was a fantastic event, but there were these couple of little things without a there wasn't really an overarching kind of structure in how the role playing games were organized. So I volunteered to come aboard and say, I'd like to try and see if I could figure that out. And so the next year I'm like uber organized. It's like, we have our conventions in like October, and I had everything, like my entire schedule of RPG games and all my GMs set up like in May. And I was like making calls for people in February. I was like really ahead of the ball because I wanted to give my GMs a lot of time to plan. And it's like, I'm like, oh, we're gonna have meetings. And again, one of the first things I learned is that doesn't work out very well because people are busy and this is supposed to be fun. But yeah, and just again learning over the years and getting bigger and getting better, um, and and kind of like the side benefit of doing Camcon was I started meeting people in the hobby outside of my home circle. So I got to meet you and Matt, and I got to meet Brendan LaSalle, and I got to meet uh, Bud from Bud's RPG Review, and the Titterpigs, Keith and Scott, and just all sorts of amazing people. Um, and and that sort of led to me being able to write in role playing games, and then doing some of these podcasts and stuff. And it's like Camcon, for lack of a better real description, has changed my life, because of the places it's allowed me, uh, forced me, or given me license to go to. So that's, in a real big nutshell, that's my Camcon experience, and how it's, brought me to us talking about conventions today. What about you? What's your experience with conventions?
Well, in the beginning,
It's very godlike.
um, so I would say about in early 2000s, I was at the time working in New York City, and I was just bored out of my mind. I decided, like, okay, I'm going to try something on the side. Something I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I don't want to rely everything on this one job.
Hmm.
Kind of wanted to expand my skill set, and that was the big problem with the job. I couldn't find a way to expand my knowledge in graphic design. I wanted to learn more and do more, and there was always this fear, like, okay, if I just get used to this, what I'm doing that inside this box, if I were to get let go or anything like that, I wouldn't have any updated skill set for the market.
Hmm.
So I wanted to try also camera work. So at the time, New York Comic Con was just about to start up for the first time, and I made a deal with a company. I won't say their name because I'm not sure where they are, or where their stance is, their reputation wise. But they
Hmm.
did video competitions. So I did some video work for them, and they said, okay, we're going to do something in New York Comic Con the first year. Would you like to come and cover some stuff? And I was like, yeah. And at the time, New York only had Big Apple Con and some other little ones. They never had a huge giant
Yeah.
convention like what San Diego had before.
Yeah.
Um, so
Like at
that's how
that
I got.
time, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but at that time, were
um,
you already like a role player and like an uber geek kind of dude at that point?
Yeah, so even like I started role playing. I think I was like around 15 at the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I did that a lot, but I didn't think of combining my skill set or knowledge and geekdom, into this to this. I just wanted to expand my graphic design experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was way too shy at the time to even think about, like, hey, let me do something about my hobbies, or my lower comic books and role playing games. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure at the time what to do with that. To me, it was just like a hobby.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's funny. It's hard. It's tough to imagine this now, but like the pre YouTube days, if you wanted to do a show about role playing games, that's like a local access TV station thing.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, in New York City, that was kind of garbage back then. Like the stations,
Yeah.
it
I
doesn't
think that's
run
pretty
very
much
well.
universal. That's the way it was kind of looked at. It's like
Yeah,
back then. I think your best example was like Wayne's World was what
yeah,
niche niche TV was, for cable access. And I mean, it's a joke, but I mean, it kind of was. But I mean, I think, at the same time, it's a great place to just be passionate about something. So,
yeah.
but anyway,
And I,
I
I and and I remember at the time I wanted to get involved in Marvel Comics, and I started like volunteering at like the Museum of Cartoon and Comic Book Art and some other
mhm,
things, so I could. At the time, I was thinking, oh, maybe I could be a writer someday, or even
nice,
a designer in comic books. That was kind of one of my like side quests back then.
yeah,
But yeah, I started becoming involved with New York Comic Con, and then I started becoming more involved with Big Apple Con, and that was like 2002, 2003 when New York Comic Con happened. And
yeah,
then I got started involved with anime conventions. There was Anime Next. That was the big one at the time. They're gone now, pretty much. But that was the big one in Jersey at the time. And that's how I started becoming involved in conventions. And since then, till even now. I just finished coming from a convention last weekend, a Kamcon in
Hmm.
Boston. I'm still doing interviews, still doing video work, still networking in a way. Still,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and during that time, I also started my own convention for a little while. I did
Oh,
three of
really?
those. Yeah, it
Okay.
was specific. It was specifically about cosplay,
Yeah.
and that was a great idea and a bad idea. And I'll talk more.
I'm sure
I'll be
we'll get
happy
into
to
that.
answer
Yeah.
that. But
No spoilers.
but did I answer your question? I kind of I'm
Yeah.
worried about drifting too
Definitely.
far.
Well, no, that's not. I drift really far, very quickly, very often. So don't even worry about it. You're a lot more focused than I am. Um, no, that definitely answers the question. I mean, just in terms of your history of it. So where do we want to start then? Like, because like your involvement in like being a convention coordinator. Let's start with making conventions and kind of work our way into attending. Um, so your experience in being like on the volunteer staff of running a convention, is it pretty much limited to those three uh, cosplay conventions that you ran?
Well, I have been involved in almost every facet at some point here and there at conventions,
Hmm.
with exception of like costume judging.
Yeah.
That's a different beast in itself. Um, but the comes when it came to budgeting, when it came to panel planning, um, when it came to volunteering at conventions, I tried that once or twice just to see what it's like. I think at the time I was trying to do like a expose of what it's like to work as a volunteer at a convention. Um, Things like that. I've been involved. So I've seen conventions come and go. I've seen them rise up and become huge things, like New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting success story, and how somehow that overshadowed Big Apple Comic Con, which was
Yeah.
there first, which is a very interesting thing to see.
Yeah.
Um, and same thing with Anime Next. Anime Next was the big thing around here. Now it's Anime NYC.
Yeah.
That's overshadowed. And so it's interesting seeing conventions come and go. I've seen so many
Yeah.
one shots, two
Yeah.
shot conventions pop up and then disappear.
Yeah, I
Um,
get. Well, I guess the geek tastes shift so quickly and in interesting directions that what's really like super geeky following one year is it just loses interest the next and it just moves
yeah,
on.
like BronyCon. BronyCon was a big convention in DC. In about 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was
Yeah,
big, and now it's gone because
yeah,
My Little Pony has moved on. The fandom has moved on.
yeah. It was a
So the
product of its
convention
moment.
just
Yeah,
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 exactly. Steampunk was big 10,
yeah,
15 years ago. Those conventions were doing so well, and now it's gone the way of the dodo. It's there's a
yeah,
few here and there,
yeah.
but
I can imagine it's the kind of thing that's going to like float back in and out from time to time. It's like somebody will make some movie that's kind of steampunkish. It'll get really big, and all of a sudden everybody's going to be into steampunk again, and then it'll wane, and then it'll come back. I think things like that because again, let's get into the planning and stuff. Like when you're making conventions, I think you want to be able to to bring a if you want to make a major convention, you want to take a lot of those niche elements and kind of bring them together because sometimes when you're focusing too much you're focusing on one audience and all of a sudden everybody else gets forgotten. And it's like since the beginning of camcon, particularly my involvement, we really tried to bring in a lot of like anime content and one of our volunteers, Jeremy Andersoff, who has worked with Anime Revolution, which is a huge convention in Vancouver. Apparently, I'm not a big anime guy, so I'm not going to say one way or the other. But he's worked with them extensively for a while, and he came to volunteer with us, and he wanted to bring anime content. So having some shows and even at some point maybe like voice artists and stuff like that. And we were like, yeah, that sounds great. I mean, initially it's about how do we bring more people in, and if those things bring people in, great. And unfortunately, it's always been one of the harder sells in our particular market is getting people to come in for the anime content. And I love Jeremy is an amazing and charismatic human being. It's like, and it made me sad sometimes to see him. You know, he'd have a show and he'd have two people in his audience, but he's still going hard. I mean, the man is amazing. But it just, we weren't getting the numbers on those types of content, and it was. And I don't know whether it's because again, we're still figuring out how to promote and reach out, and we're also kind of, we're landlocked in Kamloops, which is it's 3 hours from Vancouver. It's 3 hours from any major metropolis at least. So if we're going to draw people from those places, we need to have something compelling for people to come to see, especially when we're not going to be uber focused. Because while there is a definite focus on gaming for Kamcon, we still like to do some other things. We've got a lot of card gaming going on. We've got inroads to maybe having like some major collectible card gaming tournaments in our location, which would be a huge hit. Something I enacted 2 years ago was a Super Smash Brothers Ultimate tournament. I'm like, well, let's see how this works out. So first year, it was really, really popular. And we managed to get people from Vancouver coming up because we had a really generous like prize setup and stuff like that. And when we came to our second year and we went back to our Smash Brothers people, we're like, were people happy with it last year? What was the response? Are there any ideas moving forward? And they said, well, essentially it went really, really well last year. Everybody had a great time despite a few technical hiccups. And at that point, we were also told that Kamcon was now an official tournament on the Super Smash Brothers tour, as it were. So like if you won in Kamloops, at Kamcon, it would count towards your standings in the Super Smash Brothers official, tournament structure. So the world finals, wherever they are, points they make at Kamcon go towards that. So it's like in 1 year we became an official tournament essentially. I'm not sure of the logistics and the specifics. I might be stepping on my words or whatever because I'm not intimately involved with that. But that's still a big deal. To us at least, it's like that's just really cool. We're getting noticed from people outside.
That's huge. The secret, the way to really have really good marketing is really to have other people talk about your convention. That's the real. It doesn't matter flyers and social media and all that. Yeah, it helps a bit just to get the name out. But if you really want me to come to your con, if I hear from other people like, "Hey, this is a really good con," and they tell me why, like, okay, I'll plan to go. And then because I know when I go to a good gaming convention, I have to let my friends know. There's one here, there's one convention named TotalCon, in Marlborough, Massachusetts, and I've gone there a few times. I've always enjoyed what they put out there, and I brought my friends from New York City, which is about 4 hours, about 4 hours travel time, just to come to this convention, and they all had a great time. And if things go well, they'll bring friends as well. And that's how you get that
exactly word of mouth. Yeah, and well, because Kamcon, again, I don't want to say we struggle with it, but it's definitely something we're still trying to figure out is how to promote. And we're leaning into Facebook and a little bit of Instagram and a couple of little things like that. But using those tools to like you said, you get word of mouth, get people talking, and just trying to use those tools to promote and get interest. This year is our first year attracting guests to Kamcon, and we've got 4 special guests in particular. We've got Seth Gorkowski and John Hook of the Modern Mythos podcast, which is huge. Both Emmy winners. Seth Gorkowski is like the darling of particularly the Call of Cthulhu scene these days. So they're really good gets. My concern, because I was the one who got them, but I was still concerned that is that too niche? Is it not enough to are they not big enough names that people outside of Call of Cthulhu and Traveler and maybe Cyberpunk would know them? So, and it's a grand experiment at this point to see how much kind of ROI, return on investment, we can get from dabbling in special guests. The other special guests we have, Torrin Atkinson, who is the lead singer of the Darkest of the Hillside Thickets, a Call of Cthulhu kind of focused band, but he's also an artist. And you can see to our left here, or I don't know where it's going to be. Uh, some of the artwork that he did for us for Kamcon. He's done 2 images, and hopefully we can show you both at some point. And it's spectacular. I mean, I love those. I mean, I can't wait to get T-shirts of both of these, because that was the initial kind of impetus. Was it's like, oh, we'll talk to Torrin, see if he'll do some original images for us, so we slap them on T-shirts, maybe use them for some promotion. We're going to be leaning into these 2 images for a couple of years, we figure, easily. And then after I told him that Seth and John had been officially invited, he wanted to come up even more, because he wanted to come up already. But Seth and John in particular, and partly because of the modern mythos connection, because they actually use the Darkness of the Hillside Thickets song as their theme song for the podcast. So he's very aware of both of them. And as soon as he heard they're going to be there, he's like, it's going to be like a modern mythos family reunion. So he's coming up as well. And we have a friend in Chilliwack, which is a few hours away from Kamloops, a gentleman named Douglas Lloyd, who is old school gamer. He's done a lot of writing. He's one of those guys. He sat down at a table and played a game with Gary Gygax at one point. So I mean, the dude's legit. Sat in on my first Call of Cthulhu game at Kamcon before I was even a coordinator, and it's still one of my best sessions ever. And he was fantastic. And he's coming as a special guest representing Vetter Press, his company that they make comic books and role-playing game scenarios and such. And he's our 4th special guest at this point. So we're very excited to have all of them. But obviously, it's very role-playing game focused. And part of that is just it's what I personally had access to. Because we were talking about, voice talent and like actors that we'd bring in. But again, it's like when your budget is minuscule, which ours is, what kind of return are we going to get on some guy who did a couple episodes of, let's say, Power Rangers? Like maybe a couple of people might know him that come in, and it's not to put his work down at all, even though I'm not being specific about anybody. But again, we need to think about how are we going to get butts and seats. And this is our first foray into using a guest to see if we can get butts and seats and attendance up and sort of things like that. What kind of things did you have to think about for getting attendance for your convention planning?
For first thing that was important to me was budget. The budget we have to figure out, okay, what's our target number of attendees?
Mm-hmm.
What to be just for it to balance everything out financially. That to me was the most important thing. And I think at the time we created a convention that was specifically about cosplay. So because of that, we have to be very niche about the type of panels we would have put together for this, the type of vendors, and who's our target audience. It has to be someone that not just puts things together and puts a costume and goes out. It's someone that has a sewing machine and has all these materials and war blood, all this stuff, so they could create stuff. So that's the kind of we went towards. What we should have done, honestly, is raise up the prices. So at the time we were thinking like, oh, let's just keep this like, our ticket sales low. We should have raised them up a little bit, because we noticed that in the 3 times we don't run this convention, the same people kept coming. We kept not hitting our target number. And instead we got like maybe like 2/3 of who we wanted. But those 2/3 kept coming back year after year. So, and they were very interested, very excited to be part of it. And it occurred to me that if we wanted guests, what we should have done was raise it up, because those people would have come anyway just to learn that. They would have paid extra, so they would have gotten more value when it came to that convention for guests, and possibly even more vendors and so forth. So budget was something that That's very important. Then after that, we would just, well, went not really Dicey, but another company that we do cosplay stuff with. Um, we
That
we go at
the other YouTube
yeah,
deal
the
you
other.
work with? You're not allowed to say it?
Well, this it feels weird, kind of combining both worlds together.
No, no problem.
Talking
No
about it.
problem.
But it's Nerd Caliber. I guess I could say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, Nerd Caliber. We go to a lot of con anyway as either press or different functions, and because of that, we don't have to worry about like paying at a con. Most times we go to a convention, they usually give us a table.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay for that. We just have to make sure that we have like flyers and
Mhm.
other items available so that they can know about
Yeah.
these conventions that we're starting out. So that part was kind of easy for us for promoting
Yeah.
it. So and what Nerd Caliber does is that we go to a convention and we take as many pictures of cosplayers that we can. So when we meet up with them, we just give them our information. We tell them about the convention that we're running, and then a lot of times after the convention, we see like our ticket prices get jump up not the price, sorry.
Yeah.
After a convention, we notice that ticket sales jump up afterwards, um, and yeah, that was the first thing, budget, and then we work on marketing, and then afterwards we kind of work on like, okay, what kind of special panels we're going to run there. One of
Mhm.
the best panels that we've put together, which was so awesome. There was this cosplayer named Mink the Satyr. She's awesome. If
Yeah.
anyone that hears about this and likes cosplay, follow her because she's amazing. And what she would do is she'll bring her own sewing machine, her own materials, and as she's talking about something, she'll make something live on the spot and
Yeah.
then give it
Oh,
to me.
nice.
Yeah, she made like a Pokemon sweater or hoodie or something like that on the
Yeah.
spot, like she's talking about it, and then she would just give it to someone. And I'm like,
Nice.
just you know, um,
That's incentive to join it. I mean, that's always been a trouble. Like panels have been tough for Kamcon. First year they didn't have anything like that. They had a couple of presentations stuff, but panels not in the same way. I think they had Luke Hart stream in and have a conversation with the audience. But second year, I don't know if I did anything like that because I think I was focusing on role playing content. Year three, um, no, year two. No, I had two groups send in some videos to say hello to Kamcon, including Brendan LaSalle, who's the creator of Xcrawl, and Rome Barton and Ron Ron Agresta. Uh, Two guys were making a game called Grimmer Space that I had kickstarted at the time. And I just said, hey, can you make a video saying hi to the Kamcon people? And that was our first kind of attempt at guests, but it didn't have any panels or anything like that. So the next year, I really wanted to try and do a kind of panel thing, but it's always been tough getting an audience for it. And of course, like in the middle of all that, COVID happened, so we went kind of all digital. Now, weirdly enough, when it's all online, it's really easy to make a panel. I basically just started using all these fresh contacts and said, "Hey, would you come do a panel for me?" Sure. So I mean, like the first panel I did, I had Brendan LaSalle and Andrew Gasca, who writes the Alien RPG,
mm,
and he just came off of winning the Annie for that, so that was fantastic. Um, was Mark Greenhagen part of that one? No, he might have been the next year. I've managed to get some really top tier guests online, and it's very it's great to see how willing these people are to give their time to do something stupid like sit on a Zoom call with five other people and have a conversation, and they were fantastic. And again, when you're doing it online, and we would stream it online, and there was no live event, so it was all online. So we'd have people kind of in the chat asking questions, and it was a lot of fun. So we tried to bring that energy for the first time coming live after COVID, and it was our first kind of live convention. And I got some of the Sons of the Singularity who did Journal d'Indochine with me, who came up to the convention live, but we put all three of them on a camera and we streamed in Dennis Detweiler and Shane Ivey of the Delta Green RPG and had a conversation for a live audience. Unfortunately, our audience was like two or three people.
Mm.
It wasn't well intended. So
Well, well,
it's been difficult. Sorry, go on,
if I if I may uh,
please.
add why I think that might be a problem. I think part of it is one, your convention does a lot of different things.
Hmm.
So if I say, like, for example, I'm looking at the flyer now, and I notice you have a section about cosplay. Now, I'm not sure
Hmm.
how much cosplay happens at Kamcon, but if I was going there just for cosplay, then I'd be surprised if maybe one, maybe three or four other people for the same reason go there. But I have a feeling when people
Hmm.
come to Capcom, they're gonna think about gaming, either the Smash Brothers thing, or they're gonna be joining a game of some sort.
Yeah,
And I've
yeah,
noticed at RPG cons, panels especially if it's a local con, those tend to dwindle down because everyone's playing a game right now. So
yeah, yeah,
no one has time to do panels.
yeah. And that's something I definitely struggled with, and because I was scheduling the RPG content and the panels at the same time, and I think again that was probably my first kind of gaffe, is that it would be right in the middle of one of the blocks of role playing games. Whereas this year we're doing things a little bit different. We're trying to put the panels in between the gaming content so we can drag those people out and bring them in. So again, it's a learning process. I mean, as long as you're willing to learn, you can make it happen. I mean, I was talking to a guy on Reddit a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, he saw the lineup we had for Camcon. He's like, "Oh, I wish we could do something like that out here. I wish I could be involved in something like that." I said, "Just do it. I mean, it's not easy, definitely, but it's not that hard. I mean, 20 people in somebody's basement, that's a convention. It's not a big one, but it's a convention. Um, yeah, and you got to start somewhere. So it was like, I mean, could you hear about this stuff? Like, I mean, especially in England. Oh my God, in England, there's like conventions every other weekend, and some of them are, you know, basement of a gaming shop, and they've been running this thing for 20 years, kind of thing. And you know, 50 people, 100 people might be able to fit in and show up and play, but it's consistent and it's always been happening.
Mm.
And have and bringing that kind of energy to your events uh, is kind of vital. I think if, you just got to do it, and you got to be willing to build it up, and but continue to have fun with it. Because if you stop having fun, what's the point? It's like,
That's
especially when
true.
these are about games, and it's about these things that you love, even if it's cosplay, you know, and bringing that to people. So, um, but but again, like you're right, you know, making sure there's content for everybody is a very interesting juggling act. Um, like this year,
But
one of sorry, go on.
don't give up on panels. So even if like two or three of
No.
people attend, because the way panels are kind of like very similar to conventions themselves. If you have someone that always comes there every year, has a certain presentation, and
Hmm.
people enjoy that presentation, if it's just two or three, that will grow. I know
Yeah.
for there's a convention called PAX East, and I know there's certain presenters that if I know they're presenting at this convention, I will go check out that panel
Yeah.
because it's always entertaining. I don't care if it's only two people there or 20 people there. I know I
Yeah.
have a great time.
Well, and
And
that's it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Well, because sorry, go on.
no, no.
I keep interrupting you.
But what's great about panels is that even I mean, when I go to RPG Con, usually I want to set up games all the time.
Mhm.
But I notice that sometimes at other conventions, I get too tired or I need a break. I just want to sit down and just kind of zone away, even if it's at a panel that I may not be interested in. But those things I like that the fact that's there because sometimes I'll just pick a random panel.
Mm.
Like there'll be a time where like all right, I my game got canceled. What do I do?
Yeah.
And you know what?
Yeah.
I'm tired anyway. I want to, and I need a break. And then I'll go to a panel and I'm like, okay,
Oh,
I don't care about this cartoon series. They don't want to make it a role
yeah.
playing game. But who knows? Maybe the
Yeah.
presenter is entertaining, or maybe I can learn something that I never knew about before. Something I'll jump at a panel about something really random
Yeah.
because everything else is full or my friends are
Yeah.
busy or something like that. And I'm like, oh wow, this is actually really cool. I remember going to my first uh AMVs. They're called anime movie. No, but what they are is that they're fan vids. People make these
Yeah.
fan vids based
Oh,
on
okay.
you know. But yeah, I remember going to one. I never was really into those, but then I remember going to one, wow, 8 or 9 years ago, and it blew my mind how incredibly creative they were. And I every time a convention goes by, like let's say Anime NYC, if they have an A and B contest, I'll wait a little bit to see what pops up on YouTube and check out who entered, because they're
Yeah,
fantastic videos, well edited.
yeah. Well, this year, because again, it's about making that content that I think everybody's going to be interested in, but still using the tools that you have. For the last probably 6 7 months, me and my wife have been sort of binge watching. Have you ever heard of Taskmaster?
Is that not
It
was
well,
that anime or?
it's no, it's originally an English TV show that's basically they take five comedians, and then there's a gentleman named Greg. Oh God, I can't remember his last name. He's this major comedian in the UK. Greg and Alex run the show, and they give their comedians tasks to accomplish, and usually they involve things being really really silly or stripping away their dignity in some sort of way. It's absolutely hilarious, and we've been loving it. It's been fantastic, and I had a notion to do kind of like a Taskmaster Kamcon show. So it'd be an hour of me. I have an assistant named Andrew who's going to be assisting me, and our contestants. I've managed to get in John Hook and Seth Skrakowski because they're there anyway. I'm like, would you be interested in sacrificing a little bit of your dignity for some laughs? And they're like, totally. Sounds like a lot of fun. And Torin is going to as well. And we've got some other people lined up, and I've got a notion for an uber super special guest, like a name that is absolutely world famous. Like this, like anybody in geekdom will recognize this name, and I'm trying to line them up. And if I can get it, I think it would be absolutely amazing. So maybe I'll tell you about it later. I don't want to spoil the surprise for anybody yet, especially the other attendees, because if this person walks in, their minds are going to get blown. So I'm looking forward to that. But again, it'll have definitely flavors of role playing games because partly because that's the big part of the convention and that's a big part of what a lot of the guests do. But I still want it to be really accessible to anybody who may walk by or walk in to enjoy it. It's going to be at its core a comedy show. Um, so and it's to me it was just like, let's find some creative ways to create extra content for everybody to be able to enjoy, because we want people to buy a ticket and be able to experience as much as they can with that single ticket. And really, when you come into Kamcon, you buy a ticket and you have access to everything except for tournaments cost a little bit more to become a part of because they're prizes and whatever and whatnot. But everything else is like you come in and sign up for this game you want to play. That's all part of your ticket. I know it works. They have it working differently in different conventions, whereas like especially role playing game conventions, like you have to pay to play in some of them. Um, I understand the logistics and the reasons for it, and I think that becomes more important when you get really really big. But with our size right now, I don't think we need to do anything like that. I honestly think it would turn some people away. So, and that's the last thing we need to sort of do. But uh, again, it's not something we're thinking of anytime soon. Thankfully, it's not something we've ever had a conversation about. But in the back of my mind, I know it's something that it's a notion we'll have to tackle at some time if we get big enough. So we'll see.
Hmm. Yeah, sometimes with smaller cons, I notice when they try to get a big guest, sometimes I notice it backfires because what's great about having a major guest is that you get all this publicity, like all the social
Mhm.
media stuff that's going out. But if
Yeah.
the convention looks very empty, or
Mm.
like when I say empty, I'm talking about like a convention like maybe have like 50 people show up. I've seen
Yeah.
those terrible things happen to conventions.
Oh God.
Yeah,
I,
and they
I
have
get self conscious about that myself. It's like if there's not enough people, like when I was running that panel, and I had the Sons and I had uh, Dennis and Shane Ivy, uh, and only two people in the audience. I was really self conscious. I was like, oh my God, thank God they're not here in person. Well, the Sons were, but just in terms of that, because and I think I sort of alleviated that bit by recording it and saying, if we don't have an audience, we're still recording this for posterity. So it's going to be on the Facebook page and it'll be on our YouTube page as well. So it still has
Yeah.
purpose.
See,
So I thought
that's
that was,
great, and I'm glad you thought that, because some people don't think that far ahead. They
mhm.
just think about getting a guest, and they're not thinking about how can we use this guest to help out the con in some way, you know. And
Yeah,
but what you did was what I would have done. I would, even if
yeah,
like, yeah, 2 or 3 people show up, it doesn't matter, because anyone that's interested will want to see this,
yeah,
and by recording it, it still serves a function and it promotes the con. If I saw that, I would definitely thought like, oh wow, this happened here. I want to make a point to try to check out this con.
yeah, yeah. That's and just being creative with it. I think I have an idea for the Taskmaster show in particular, where I think one of my initial um, uh, challenges for the contestants, as if because if we have like a small audience, okay, the first task is going to be go out into the convention and get as many audience members as you can find. You have 3 minutes, and so they'll be running around in the convention trying to gather human beings to come in and watch the show. I figured that might be kind of fun, get a bit of a couple of laughs out of it. Even if we only get another 10 people in the room, it's another 10 people in the room, and it's created a little bit of content for our hour-long show. So it's again, I think the task of a convention coordinator, you need to be able to have a lot of creativity in terms of how you're presenting this convention to your potential attendees. It's it it can be a little daunting, I think, to some people. I kind of love being in the middle of chaos. I used to be a filmmaker myself. You probably understand this idea of when you're the director, you're in the middle of the chaos and you understand everything that's going on, and it seems like and everybody else is like, "What the hell is going on?" You're like, "Don't worry, I've got it handled." Now, whether that's an illusion or not, um, only you can tell, because sometimes it is, and sometimes that's wonderful too. But I love being in the middle of the chaos and kind of seeing it's like having the numbers around the screen. It's like a beautiful mind kind of thing. It's like I know what's going on. I can figure this out. So I love it. I didn't think I would love it as much as I do when I first started getting involved with Kamcon, but uh, it's quite a high when you plan something like that and everything works out sometimes better than you thought it was going to. So yeah, chasing that dragon uh, is a double edged sword probably, but
Yeah.
so far I've been having a good time with it. And again, I look at this as I'm not being paid to do it. I'm not making money on it. I'm doing this. It's like as a hobby and because I love doing it, and that's pretty much our entire team. We're all nobody's being paid. Everybody's doing it because they love games and they love Camcon, I think that shows, and I think that's really really important. You know, if you're not loving what you're doing, that's going to come across in how it all gets presented. You know, it sort of gets lost in the shuffle.
Mm. Do you have a green room for your people that have been volunteering for CamCon? Do you have anything like that?
We do have a
Well, green,
separate, yeah, we that is a good point because we only did that for the first time last year, and kind of by accident because our venue said, "Oh, you can have these offices you want to if you want a place for to use it for marshaling or whatever." And we're like, and it has like a big uh, board table, a small kitchenette, and a smaller boardroom, and some bathrooms, and it's like a little separated from the rest of the convention. And it was like it was the greatest thing. It's like if you're tired and you just want to get away from the cacophony of things, this is where you go. And so having that space for our guests and for our volunteers and stuff was the biggest boon last year, and we've got it again this year. And it's brilliant, and it's the kind of thing is like, why didn't we ever think of anything like this before? But again, we're amateurs. We're figuring this out as we go along. So obviously, to any more experienced convention goers, is like, well, of course you need some sort of green room or private space for guests and volunteers. So, but it's good that you mentioned that.
yeah. So I mentioned before that, um, attendees spreading the good word about a convention helps
Hmm.
will drive more people to come to your con. But people that are volunteering, that is very essential that they have a great time, they're not
Hmm.
overworked, and they're fed.
Yeah.
And if you could give them, if the budget allows, of course. I know sometimes it's a little tough, but
Yeah.
like a small gift of some sort means could mean the world to them.
Yeah.
Um, if I may share a quick experience, uh,
Please.
so so there's I've I've helped out and been part of many conventions, and rarely have I ever had a bad time, except one time. And I'm not going to mention the con's name. It's still happening. I will
Hmm.
never work with them in any capacity ever again.
Oh.
They there was a con that just started recently, a role playing game convention, and I knew the group, and I said, hey, if you want some video work, I'll be happy to help you out, in some way. If you want some video coverage, so when the convention started happening for their first year, they asked me to come. They said, all right, hey, listen, we'll give you a free pass. Can you record our panels for me? And I was like, sure, but understand that I work, so I'll do what I can to film when I can.
Hmm.
And I remember that Friday, it was a 3-day con. That Friday, I had a work emergency, so I couldn't make it that evening. So there was one panel I missed, and I, of course, did the professional thing. I
Yeah.
I, uh, I called and I texted them, let them know, hey, I won't be able to make it. Um, but the next day, I got a lot of flack. Like, oh, you should have been here. What's going on? I'm like, oh, okay. And I felt a little bad. It's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
So I did. I recorded at least 3 panels that day. Actually, no, 2 panels on Saturday, one on Sunday. On
Hmm.
Sunday, they wanted me to record a game being played. I didn't get much details about the game being played, but I saw what the other tables were like, and it's just typical, like 5 to 6 people, one game
Hmm.
master, usually a round table. It's like, okay, what I'll do is I'll have 2 mics set up. I had this elaborate thing, like, all right, I'll have 2 mics that are 180 degrees set up, facing opposite behind each other, so that I capture everyone's um, audio for that table. I'll have
Yeah.
2 cameras pointing in different directions. That way I can capture everybody. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this would work. What they didn't tell me is that this was actually like a huge 24-person event,
Oh,
where
wow.
there was like these like what was it, 5 tables put together like a big eye. And there was like 2 game masters on the other end. And I was like, oh, I can't, and the session was over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe it was my fault. I should have maybe asked them more questions about it, you know. But I told them afterwards, hey, listen, I can't salvage it. I couldn't get. There's no way I could get 24 people's audio.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it was terrible, and I edited the footage of the panels I recorded, sent it to them, but they were just so mean and nasty about it. And I was like,
That's
all right, you know what? Find your own. I'm done.
Yeah, no, totally. I think with volunteers, CamCon, again, it's our volunteers have always been great. Um, we need to work on sourcing volunteers. Um, that's been one of our issues. Uh, it's because it's a difficult thing to do, because obviously you're asking somebody to do something for prolonged amounts of time for no compensation other than some intrinsics. It's like, yeah, you get of course you get a pass to the event for the entire weekend, do anything you want. um and like again, I'm not saying anything that we're doing, but some people, it's like, oh, here's a t-shirt or whatever or whatnot, and buy, like, I'll have a pizza party at some point or something like that. But yeah, it's a big ask to have somebody come out and do something for nothing. And I can't fathom any organization, and obviously it happens with your experience, but not being grateful for whatever they are given. Um, to me, and it's like, even if it goes sideways or whatever, it's like, I appreciate that you tried and it just didn't work out. And it's like, because I have experience with especially like audio video technical elements. We're weak on that. I mean, it's like, if I had you at CamCon, I would be so happy, because because we are so, it just doesn't work out very well. Last year we had our best panel was uh, a RPGs in Education panel that Tyler ran with some local educators uh, and and child specialists, and a lot of people actually showed up to it. It was quite popular and quite well done. And I would, and along with like my own panels, I was recording them and I wanted to put them online. And our audio, it got screwed up and just didn't work out. And it was very, very disappointing because that was one of the more well attended ones. Thankfully, it was well attended, so it still achieved what it was doing in the moment. But the fact that we have so much trouble figuring out audio and video issues for convention stuff, because I'm talking with Tyler now about I'd like to record um, the Taskmaster show if possible. And so we're receiving a source of camera, and we're going to try and make sure the room is well mic'd so that we're catching everybody's audio and stuff. But again, it's a lot of it is up in the air and whether it's going to happen or not. And for my own part, I'm going to have to be able to depend on other people who know about this stuff as opposed to me trying to figure it out, because I only have so much time to figure some things out, and I've got so many other things on my plate. Being one of the guys, one of the guys who know things at Kamcon, because over the years, like coming in with on year 2 and coordinating the GMs, that was pretty much my only real kind of thought of what I wanted to do with Kamcon. And at this point now, I'm like the number 3 guy at Kamcon, making decisions and being important. That was in quotes for people who are listening. But again, being at the center of that chaos, I relish it. But when the chaos goes bad, and and there are technical issues that you just can't do anything about, it sucks. And but not being able to still be grateful to the people that assist in any way they can, that's just bad form. It's completely against anything I would ever feel or do. I mean, unless somebody went out of their way to be just a jerk or do something unpleasant at the convention, as a volunteer or as something like that, I can't. I can't imagine that somebody's going to come and not want to give everything they can to make it a better event. That needs to be my hope with everybody who becomes involved, when bringing in my volunteers. But translating that gratitude to them in the way of, it's like, yeah, you're going to show up and we're going to have you run this table for however long, but I want to make sure you have time to go check out this panel or play some games yourself or whatnot. Like, I mean, it's like, you love this stuff too, so you should be able to play just as much as anybody else, and play. I mean, in terms of the broader scope of play, not just playing games, but play and have fun at a convention. I think that's important, because and also it just gives them a better kind of idea what they're doing this for. Because if all you're going to do is work the entire weekend, then you're not really sure what you're essentially selling. Because let's face it, our volunteers are part of our sales staff in a manner of thinking. So if they understand and they're kind of passionate about what the convention is bringing, that's going to translate to anybody they talk to. So yeah.
So it looks like, for the most part, CamCon, I think is I think I see a great future with CamCon, as long as whoever's doing the budgeting, takes good care of it, checks,
Yeah.
make sure it doesn't go over budget. Because I think honestly, 500 is a really great start, especially
Yeah.
if you're not near a major city. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I I would say 5 years. I would say maybe you'll hit 5,000. And I hope, I'll be honest with you, I hope your growth is
Holy
slow.
crap. Yeah.
Well, if
5,000 in 5 years is not slow.
yeah, I hope, actually, to be honest with you, I see potential with this, but
Yeah.
I do hope it's slower. I hope maybe 1,000 in 5 years.
Mhm.
The only reason, because the more people, the more headaches. So yeah,
Yeah,
money comes in,
obviously.
but then you have to worry about security. You have
Mhm.
to just so many. I don't know. Again, your venue, but I don't know
Yeah.
if 5,000 is like too much. I know at least here
For the
there's
venue
five
we have
total.
right now, yeah, for the venue we have right now, 5,000, that is not gonna happen. We'd have to move completely or expand to different locations, which there is a lot of, available kind of real estate, as it were, in Kamloops. Kamloops has been called the tournament capital of Canada. So there are a lot of arenas and a lot of large spaces to do those types of things. A lot of them are outside, so we won't be worrying about that, but there are options to expand beyond that. I mean, it's like you look at Gen Con and they use the Lucas Oil Center, which is it's a world class stadium, and they run stuff out of that. So obviously, they're figuring that out properly, and yeah, we need to figure out what we do with growth as it happens, and what
Yeah,
changes we may or may not need to make. I mean, in terms of our venue, we're at the Campus Activity Center at TRU, and it's very, a lot of it is very kind of non-standard in layout for a convention, which I think is kind of a benefit and a negative at some points. I mean, there's one large area, it's the grand hall, that it's locked. It's your typical convention room that you see in like hotels and stuff like that, and that's where we essentially put our vendor hall, because it's a place we can put under lock and key at the end of the night, so vendors don't have to pull all their stuff out. But everything else, we have meeting rooms and larger kind of ballroom slash uh, like the type of place you'd have like a wedding and reception area we were using those rooms for like one is dedicated to the role playing games, one is dedicating to tactical and card games, and then we have meeting room that we're dedicating to board gaming and some spill out for that as well. And then there's another panel room that we're using as our quote unquote main stage, that we're going to do like the Cast Master show, and the panels will be done there, and any other presentations like that. And then there's an open rotunda area that covers a couple of levels, that's round, and that is basically in the center of all these other rooms and areas that there's kind of like artist alley and some other smaller vendors, and stuff built out of there. So we're trying to keep a flow going through all of these spaces, and having that rotunda is really, really cool. Um, the challenges, you talk about security. Security is a challenge, especially when you want things to be fair. You don't want to be like, double checking tickets every 5 minutes kind of thing, even though we need to be more careful about that. But for the most part, again, when you're only dealing with 500 people, it becomes a lot easier. It's like, okay, you've got your badge around your neck. It's the green one. That means it's the weekend. You're okay. Come in and play some games. So uh, again, we're figuring it out, and to an extent, growth kind of forces you to figure things out. Um, and yeah, it's scary. I'll be the first to admit it. It's like when you said 5,000 people, I froze for a moment
there,
because
there,
I
there,
can't even. Yeah,
I
I would love
remember
it.
I remember Rhode Island Kamcon,
Hmm.
and they expected a small, it was their first year, expected a small number. They they already reached their max like by noon. The fire marshal had to come in and shut down.
Oh
New York
no.
Comic Con, same thing. Um,
Yeah.
New York Comic Con, the first year, I'll remember it was they only had like this. Anyone that knows the Javits Center will know they only took only 1/4 of the space that was there. And I remember the fire marshal coming in and shutting down. It's like no more tickets could be sold. This place is too
Hmm.
packed, it's too dangerous. And same thing we were on a Comic Con that first year. So yeah, cons could go up really quickly if word of positivity spreads.
Yeah.
And but again, I don't know the area where Kamcon is. I have to do like I don't know the survey or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised again if it's a good con. Is there any other cons around the area near you guys?
Um, there's city of Penticton, it's Penticon, and they have it's. I'm not sure about in the same scope of content, but it's pretty similar to what we do. And they're Penticton's like an hour and a half away, I think. In Vancouver, there's all sorts of stuff that happens in
Yeah.
Vancouver. There's the Anime Revolution. We went to as guests of the because you mentioned the trading tables and stuff for
Mm.
conventions. Terminal City convention. which is mostly board gaming focused, I think, but they still have a lot of stuff around that. And they
Now,
had, I think they
oh,
were,
question about
yeah.
that one. What's the attendance on that one? Do you know?
Oh, I'm not sure what the attendance was of Terminal City.
Mm,
I didn't go. It's like I should know a lot more of these numbers and stuff, but I kind of focus on the day to day and on the ground operations at Kamcon, so I'm less in the know of how they run things at the other conventions. But it's fairly big. I think. I'll have to ask, but let's just say it's at least 3 or 4 times bigger than we are. At least they had I think a little over 100 sessions of role playing games running, um, and that's impressive.
mm,
This year, because we've been creeping up on that, and one of our big, because if we're going to especially identify as a role playing game tournament or a role playing game convention, we want to bring that number up and we want that to be a selling point of some sort. So what we're hoping to get to some point is to be able to say that CamCon is the biggest role playing specific
mm,
convention on the West Coast and have the numbers to back that. So like if Terminal City has 100 sessions of role playing games, we need to have 110 so that we
mm,
can have that soundbite and say the biggest role playing game convention in Western Canada. And that would, that's something to hang your hat on, and that's something to build on. And that's something that, you read if you live in Calgary or if you live in Saskatchewan or Oregon or a little further out that's comfortably able to come. You look at that and said, oh, okay. And they've got Seskorkowski. Oh, okay. Maybe this might be something worth checking out. And we need to build on that. Um,
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
and it's the building that's the tough part. Again, yeah, we've been running convention for 5, 6, 7 years, give or take, and depending on whether you want to include the COVID years or not, because the 2 years of online content essentially, and those are the years I met you and Matt and the really dicey
Mm,
crew, um, uh, and it's, I mean, you we're all, again, just can't I can't stop reiterating, we're really at our hearts amateurs and we're just making this stuff up as we go along. It's like, do we have t-shirts? Sure, we have t-shirts because conventions have t-shirts, so we make some t-shirts and we've done really good with that sort of stuff. um
mm,
and just getting the right people and having the right ideas and seeing, and it gets like, I look at other conventions from afar because I'm just not able to go. I am not a rich man, and it kind of sucks
mm,
being, in the middle of British Columbia where nothing is very close. And the ability to get to Gen Con, it's going to cost me a few $1,000s that I just don't have at this time. So I have to look at these conventions and these organizations and events from afar and see how they handle it and what they do, and and kind of learn from somebody else's experience and try to apply it to us. Obviously, there are challenges with Gen Con that we do not need to worry about at this point. I mean, the amount of football fields of difference between 500 attendees and 15,000 attendees is staggering.
mm,
I couldn't even imagine some of the issues and problems we'd run into coming of that. But all of these conventions are very generous as well, because I think year 3 we wanted to create a kind of a code of conduct, and kind of like a safety schedule kind of thing, for attendees and volunteers. And Gen Con is very openly says ours is Creative Commons. It's available for anybody. Just take it word for word. Just replace Gen Con with your own convention, and it'll work for you.
mm,
So it covers all the bases that need to be covered, and it's all really kind of like common sense kind of stuff. But you want to be able to put it down and have some ideas of how to address that. And again, that comes with growth and figuring that out. But having these other conventions being so willing to help you out, is heartening. It's fantastic, and I think it's in the spirit of growing this community, and maybe not as much growing the community, but linking the community, because we're everywhere. Role players, cosplayers, wargaming, all this stuff. We're everywhere around the world. And the better that these conventions and their communities get along and get along with other conventions and communities, the better and the tighter this whole community of gamers and whatnot and geek ephemera are going to be. And I think that needs to be the final goal of anybody running a convention. It's not just about running your convention, but it's about making this hobby and all of these adjacent hobbies better in whatever
Mm,
way you can.
yeah.
So
And I think
that's a nice
a good. I
period.
think
Yeah.
that's yeah. I was gonna say that's a good note to kind of, I guess, tie up this conversation.
Yeah.
So Kamcon, October 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2024.
Yeah.
What's the location again? It's Canada, but
Kamloops, BC. Yeah. Kamloops, British
okay.
Columbia. Basically, we're in the middle of a desert, although it's kind of getting close to wintertime at that point, so it gets colder. And people can't wrap their head around that. Like I talk to my friends in the UK all the time, and it's like, oh, you live in Canada, it must be freezing all the time. It's like we got up to plus 50 Celsius last year in heat. We get hot in Canada. I'm in the middle of a desert. So, I mean, I'm not talking sand dunes or anything like that, but it's a very arid area. The kind of place where you need to have air conditioning in your homes. So, but yeah, we're isolated a little bit in terms of just distance and geography. But we're trying to make it worth everybody wanting to come up and having fun with all the experience and coming to meet these people in person. I don't want to put my special guests behind a plastic protective barrier of any sort. So I want them mingling. I want them playing games, and I want them, meeting people. And it's like, these aren't, gods to put on high. They're people that want to have fun with this, just like you. So,
Yeah.
if you're interested, check out www.kamloopsconventions.ca. We'll have the link in the show notes, the QR code and stuff. And we're online. Just look up Kamcon on Facebook and drop us a message or ask questions in the comments below, depending on what platform this is going to be on at the time. And I will do my very best to answer as much as I can. Because if you wanna help us be better, that's the best thing you can do is ask questions.
Mm,
Because I
indeed,
just want to
indeed.
be better. Yeah. So one of
I
these
will
years we'll
put.
have to drag you out to Kamcon.
No, I was just thinking, like, I gotta update my passport.
Yes, we've had to deal with that with our guests as well. It's like, oh God, I need a passport to come. I'm like, yeah, you should get on that. So,
Yeah.
but thankfully that's been taken care of. So, but yeah, that's the other thing. It's like we are in Canada, so if it's something you're thinking about, making sure you're able to cross the border is a big deal. So. But again, I have a little bit of experience in trying to figure that out. So if you have questions about that, I might be able to help out. But don't I'm not a government organization, so don't inundate me with passport information requests because there's not going to be that much I can do.
All right, excellent. Well, viewers, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something about this. If you're organizing your first convention, I hope this has helped you out in some way. And yeah, be safe out there. We'll see you next time.
See you later.